Hey, welcome back to this mini lecture on crisis communication. My name is Dino. This is on crisis, the second stage of crisis communications. The first being pre-crisis, second crisis, third is post-crisis. Here again, we're talking about crisis. We'll be talking about detecting the crisis, containing the crisis, and recovering from the crisis. First, we'll be talking about detecting the crisis. When a crisis emerges, you want to make sure that you monitor the situation early. If it's an especially important, serious crisis, you want to convince the upper management of your corporation that it is serious. And you also want to assess the type and character of the crisis that you have. In short, different crises require different strategies. You want to make sure that you have an appropriate one chosen. In terms of the overview of crisis communications, the second stage after detecting is containing. The number of steps you can do to contain a crisis. First is to respond quickly to make sure that you're actually addressing the crisis as soon as anything happens. You want to acknowledge what you do not know yet. You may not know everything at the beginning, and you want to make sure that when you're talking to various constituencies and publics that you tell them what you do and do not know. You want to set fairly rigid information priorities. Find out what information is important and get that out. Less important, maybe keep closer to the vest. You want to make sure you express sympathy to the public and those who are the victims of the crisis. However, when you do this, you want to express concern without opening the company to liability. If the liability is really big, you could have a fatal impact on your corporation. You also want to develop strategy based on the crisis type. In short, you want to choose from a range of different strategic options, which I will show you right here. Here's a number of strategic options. If you are involved in misdeeds that are very serious, you want to have a full apology. A little bit less serious, you might want to do just corrective action to repair what's happened. You may want to engage in ingratiation, where you make a reminder of the organization's past good deeds. You might want to engage in a justification, where you minimize or limit the seriousness of the problems so that you show that they're there but they're not that big a deal. You might want to have an excuse saying that you have no control of the situation or there are no bad intentions that were involved. You might want to go into a full denial, where you basically say that no crisis exists. And finally, this is obviously a pretty risky strategy given how it sounds. You may want to attack the accuser, where you confront him or her, threaten him or her, or file a lawsuit. Obviously, that's a pretty drastic step. In terms of a spectrum, at the very top here, you have from defensive on one end of the spectrum to accommodative. If you're defensive, you might want to attack the accuser. Less defensive, denial. Less defensive, excuse. Going on to justification, ingratiation, corrective action, and full apology, where you're fully accommodative. In terms of the crisis responsibility, if it's very weak, like say if it's something like rumors, that's a weak crisis responsibility that increases for natural disasters, malevolence, accidents, and misdeeds. So basically on these strategic options, you want to choose whether you want to be along the spectrum of defensive to accommodative, or along the spectrum of weak crisis responsibility to strong crisis responsibility, and choose accordingly. And finally, for the overview of crisis communications for crisis is recovering. Here are a couple of steps, several steps that you could do to recover from a crisis. You want to follow up on information requests by various media organizations or stakeholders. You want to communicate with stakeholders to assure them that you've dealt with the crisis. You want to inform the people in public about the corrective actions you may have taken subsequent to the crisis. You might want to talk with various stakeholders, especially ones who are big shareholders, about the financial implications on your company. You want to continue expressing compassion. Oftentimes there is a tendency just to do it at the very beginning and not to do it as the situation continues to unfold. And you want to continue tracking issues and risks to see if there's anything that ideally has gotten better or non-ideally it's gotten worse, and try to deal with those. That was crisis communications crisis stage. Thanks for watching. Take care.